Hello and welcome back to What's Your Story. I'm your host Aryan Thaman, and in this episode, we're going to be talking to a vegan chef. I'm glad to announce that we have partnered up with the Innovation Food Company to bring you guys this podcast. Prakarshi Pulkit, the vegan chef I told you about, he actually started off as a five-star hotel chef, but now he's gotten more into vegan food research and actual product manufacturing with regards to vegan products in India. We're going to be talking a lot about how vegan products are made, what kind of research goes behind them, and is veganism the way to go for people? Is it the healthier option? Is it really the best food out there, best kind of diet out there? We're going to be talking a lot about all of these things. We're also going to be talking about uh, Prakarshi's story and how he actually switched his career from being at the top at a five-star hotel and then starting his own company and then going from there. So I hope you guys like this podcast. Please be sure to like, share, and comment. Uh, as always, audio versions of this podcast are available on all major streaming platforms. Links to those are in the description. Um, yeah, let's start it off.
Let it go and lay back. Just take it nice and slow. Easy red. Can't fight the feeling, so lose your mind. Oh, slipping away in the dreams while it is. Don't you worry, no. Keep on trying. Pull out the crazy trap deep inside.
So we're in conversation with Prakarshi, and let's see how it goes. Hi, what's up? What's going on?
Hi, Aryan. I'm good. I mean, whatever could go on is going on.
That's true. That's true. So tell us a bit more about yourself. Like, what are you up to these days? At home or at the restaurant? What's up? What's going on?
Well, technically, I've quit my job now and I work from home because of the whole situation. And so I spend most of my days, doing my research and reaching out to my people. Reaching out to contract manufacturers for my company, and basically reaching out to other companies that are doing research in the plant-based field, and then figuring out ways to collaborate and manufacture the things that we are working on. And then of course there are of course house duties. Everyone got scotch duties at lunch. You take a scotch brite and you scrub your burtan. So that's that's a daily
That,
routine.
that's very true, dude. I've been doing the same, honestly.
And yeah, and then we have dinner, and I try to squeeze in a PlayStation game every once in a while.
Oh,
Uh,
that's nice. So what games do you play?
well, now I'm playing Gran Turismo. I'm playing
Oh,
Ghost
nice.
Recon, and
Nice.
yeah, there's some few other games, but on and off. There's Horizon. So yeah, these are cool. I'm playing them right now.
Nice. I used to play Gran Turismo back when I had the PS3, and I
Uh-huh.
finished almost the whole thing. And there were these endurance races and stuff, which were like 9 hours
Yeah.
long. But I had friends over, and the whole night we played that race. So
Wow.
it was
It
nice. It
is
was
really,
nice.
yeah, it is really very realistic, and I enjoy that.
Well, enough talk about the games. Let's go into the stuff that you're doing now. So, what
Yeah.
kind of research are you doing in your company?
So, well, when we started, we were primarily a egg company. We had invested a large amount at the IIT Delhi, and we had requested them to create a whole portfolio of alternative proteins for us. And yeah, my job initially was to just take that technology outside a lab and take it into a real plant, and then execute that and into a real world scenario. So that's how we started. But soon I realized that this was not challenging enough, and we could do 10,000 more things. And I started. I mean, of course, I was very interested in this for a while, and I'd been doing some research. But now that I got to do this full time, I really started doing more research and understanding how and what we can make. So I've been working on vegan cheeses, on vegan butter, on making vegan cream, on vegan chicken and vegan fish, and so on. So working on all of these, and then essentially just trying to understand if we were to manufacture it as a company, where would I buy the ingredients from, who, and because we don't have our own facility, so where do we go to make it, and where do we go to pack it, and then where do we go to sell it. So it was a very steep learning curve. These past 5 months, I mean, I'd been cooking in hotels, and you could put me in front of 1,000 people, and if I get 2 hours to cook for them, I'm sure I'll be able to cook a meal for them, and I wouldn't even break a sweat. But this was a completely different field for me, and so I had to do a lot of thinking, a lot of reaching out, a lot of understanding before I could really start to understand what we need to do to move ahead.
Yeah. So it's mostly research from what I gather as of now, right? But there's definitely a
Hmm.
scope for manufacturing the products that you're making and
Absolutely.
distributing them on a large scale. Especially
Yeah, and
like especially in the American markets, like from what I can see, a lot of American people, they're too ingrained in the idea of eating meat. And the amount of beef
hmm.
consumption here is absolutely insane. Like you go to any restaurant, you're definitely gonna have burgers and Italian beef and all of that stuff. Which is, if you think
Yeah.
about it, it's it's a lot of calories, it's a lot of fat, it's a lot of it's not a lot of good protein, I would say. And at
Hmm.
the end of the day, it's not good for the environment as well. And we're gonna talk more about that for sure. So tell me a little bit more about yourself, about your upbringing and where you from.
So my father's a police officer, and I mean, if anyone asks me where are you from, I say India because I've been to 18 states, and I've been
Oh,
brought up in, I think, 10 of them. I was born in Ranchi, and then I was brought up in West Bengal in the cities of Malda, Kurseong, Darjeeling. These are beautiful tiny towns,
yeah.
and then moved to Calcutta, which is the capital. From there, my father got posted to Ladakh. We were there for a year and a half, and then from there back to Chandigarh, then Tripura, and then back from there to Chandigarh, and then moved from there to Ranchi, where I was born, and then I moved to Manipal for 5 years. Post that, I moved to Delhi for a couple of years, then to Mumbai, and now to Goa for a couple of years. So yeah, I've been all over the place.
So right now you're in Goa.
Yep.
That's like my second home, dude, honestly. I've been there like 6, 7 times now. Like
Wow.
basically every 2 years I have to take a trip to Goa and just chill there. Like do nothing, just have a few beers on the beach and just chill out.
That's what Goa is all about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Back in my college days, I'd been to Goa 17 times in my 5 years in college.
Oh.
So
So tell us a bit more about your college and what did you study?
So actually, I started my career as a computer science major. I was studying computer engineering at Manipal University.
Okay.
I had great interest in being a chef since I was in class 10th. I used to love to cook. I was a big fat foodie, and but my parents never really took that as a serious profession. Typical Indian working class parents, and they wanted me to build something myself and wanted me to be an engineer or a doctor, and anything else was not good enough.
Right.
By the time I reached 12th, I realized that, probably I'd want to be a Air Force pilot, and the whole Top Gun thing kicked inside, and I wanted the leather jacket and the aviators. So that was the dream. At that point, fortunately, I got into the National Defense Academy. But then
Okay.
again, my dad was very apprehensive. He said he's been serving the country for the past 40 years, and he always had this dream to go to an engineering college, which he never could. And strangely, Indian parents have this thing of reliving their dreams through their children, and
That's
that's what
true.
he wanted to
You
do.
know, you won't believe this. I had the exact same conversation with the first guest on my podcast where he literally said the exact same word that you just said now. That Indian parents have this kind of a thing where they want to relive their dream through their children.
That's so true. I think even I'm going to do that sometime in life. I did get into the NDA, but parents were not so happy about that either. They stopped me from going there. In fact, hid my letter until the day before the interview. And I had given a lot of other exams, so I got into a couple of colleges, and luckily I got computer science at a very good school, which was Manipal University in Udupi.
Okay.
And it's a really good school, and I got into a good batch, I mean good course. So that sealed my fate. Had I been a useless kid, I could have done something else.
Right.
Fortunately, I got through there, and I started my computer science there. By the end of first year, I knew that I'm going to be a musician, and I'm going to be a rock star more than I'm going to be a computer engineer. I had my band going, and that became the prime focus of my life. By the end of second year, I realized that I will be a pathetic engineer at best, and I'd be wasting time, my own time, and causing myself regret for the rest of my life, and probably blame my parents for for imposing their dreams on me. And I decided to take a stand against it. So before the third year began, I took my college fees. I joined a sister school in that same university, where they were just starting out a culinary arts course, which was a 3-year course. And I knew I'd be losing 2 years and a lot of money that my parents put in my education. And I know it was a very scary decision at the time, but I knew I had to do something. So I took that call. I went there. I took admission, and then I told my parents. So mom was still okay. Dad disowned me for the first few months, but it all turned out good, and I was very very blessed. I had a great mentor, and I think he helped me make all the right choices, and yeah, and after that I've been very very happy.
Nice. So let's go back to one like personal question. Um,
Mhm.
does your wife let you into the kitchen, especially at this time?
Well, yeah. I mean, she usually. I mean, most women in the family avoid. When I come into the kitchen, they just can't take it because I work like a chef, and when I come in, I start ordering people, and I
Yeah,
start throwing things around,
I
and
get
I have
that.
my own way of working, and that's not the way you usually work at home. So it's always a fight. Whenever I go into the kitchen, I have a fight. So that's my status quo. But
Yeah,
yeah, now they're too bored of and I mean bored of eating and cooking all the time, and so it's my job to make something extraordinary out of nothing. So when
right.
we don't have anything and they don't have any ideas, so that's when I'm left alone in the kitchen, and no one comes near me until I'm done. So yeah, I do get to cook now.
That's nice.
And
That's
I've
nice.
also started doing a few recipe videos and all. So yeah, so I do that every alternate day, and so that also gives me a lot of chance to cook.
So are you posting those recipes anywhere?
Absolutely. You can watch it on YouTube, Instagram, even Facebook. The page is called Satvik Chef, Satvik Satvik Chef,
So I'll
and
add the link to the description there.
absolutely, thank you.
So let's talk more about the plant-based meat alternatives that are there in the market right now, because it's a
Hmm.
big industry in the US right now. I mean, if you just go to a grocery store, the first thing that you're gonna find in the meat section is actually the plant-based meat, which sometimes it's not the thing that I'm going in for, but
Right.
sometimes it's good to eat that as well. So let's talk more
Yeah.
about that. What kind of research are you doing with plant-based meat alternatives? What things are actually, which kind of plants are used to actually create such a alternative?
I mean, well, this is a very, very vast topic. I mean, we could talk about it for 13 hours straight, but I'm going to keep it short and simple. So, essentially speaking, plant based meats have a few intrinsic problems. One, they have a beany flavor, they don't get that chicken umami rich flavor. Two, they don't bind really well. And three, they don't really hold a lot of fat or moisture during or after cooking. So these are the three imperative problems that everyone faces. Now, plant-based meats today, varying from Omnipore, Beyond Meat, and all of the whole series. I mean, you know it. So they've been using everything from beetroot powder, soy isolates, pea isolates, rice powder, and so on. So essentially, it's just any kind of high protein grain where the proteins can be isolated and then reconstituted with other flavoring agents and other ingredients to actually give you that whole result. Now, again, this research goes into a lot of different phases where let's take an extreme case where Beyond or Impossible were able to manipulate a bacteria that could actually ferment plant-based proteins to giving you that umami rich flavor. And then of course there are mushroom based formulations, that mycoproteins, where the mycelium from mushrooms are used to generate the flavor, and many many different ways. But our objective was a much more simpler approach. My objective was to actually design something like a chef. So what I wanted to do, which was the easiest thing I felt to do, is instead of reinventing the wheel, take different components of the wheel from different parts and from people who have been working on it, and take all of their collective knowledge and build your own wheel. So that's what I have been working on. So we were really looking to recreate conventional Indian food in an affordable and tasty format, without actually going through the whole process of reinventing everything from scratch. So then we started looking at what other people were doing. Some companies are experts in flavors. They manufacture wonderful flavors that are plant based. Some companies have been working on specialized fats for the plant based industry. There are companies who've been working on retextured proteins that have been refined to a stage so you don't get that soy or beanie taste. And then some companies make additives like yeast extracts and other flavoring agents that essentially give you that umami. So we started to explore the ones that had been operating in India, and we started to reach into the community through the
Right.
Good Food Institute, the Humane Society International, and through PETA and your vegan outreach programs, and just started to get into the community to understand what kind of work is going on. And then we started to collaborate with them and their research teams to basically understand what they had learned till now. Fortunately, they've all been very kind, and they've shared all their knowledge with us. Now what we have taken is taken all their collective knowledge, and basically what they're trying to do is they're sharing that knowledge so that we buy the ingredients from them, essentially to to manufacture our own products. But that's absolutely fine with us, because at the end of the day, we don't intend to manufacture the ingredients ourselves. So now we're in the process of taking all that collective knowledge and compiling it, and then creating our own thought process or our own product, and then taking it to a factory and then testing it. So yeah, that's the kind of, essentially, the in a broad way, the kind of research that I've been working on.
Right. And some of your recipes, if I'm not wrong, and some of your blogs are also available at the innovationfood.com, who is actually our partner
Oh
for this
yes.
podcast. So please go and check out their
Mhm.
website and check out Prakarshi's blog on their website. I think it's the mac and cheese one, right? The vegan mac and cheese.
Yeah, those guys have been wonderful, in all the support they've extended, and I've done a couple of articles for them now. One is called Brownie Points, and where I recreate a brownie that was from the Ritz Carlton Hotel at London. It was the Queen's favorite brownie. So that I wanted to recreate that recipe into a sugar-free, dairy-free, vegan brownie recipe, and then I also did a recipe for a mac and cheese, vegan mac and cheese.
How did you end up making the cheese for the mac and cheese?
Essentially, what we're trying to do when we're doing a cheese, or even any other kind of meat alternate or anything, is to first of all mimic the visuals and the mouth feel. And once you've got that, then it's about flavor, right?
Hmm.
And I always tell everyone, when it comes to flavor, if you can't convince them, then confuse them,
True.
right? Because it's once you're confused, it's hard to tell. So for me, the idea was to do a creamy sauce base, that could mimic the whole cheesy feeling. But you also do understand that after you've baked it, actually, and essentially, when you do actually do a mac and cheese, you don't really use a lot of cheese in the sauce. The sauce is essentially a bechamel, which is just made from milk and flour and butter. So that was the thought, and what I thought was, how can I make a bechamel without flour and without the milk? So
Right.
I knew that cauliflower serves a great texture, because cauliflower sauces and cauliflower creams are really really delicious, and they have that nice smooth texture. So that's the base. So I knew of a cauliflower puree or a cauliflower sauce, and I decided to just flavor a cauliflower sauce and confuse people so that it seems like cheese, and basically just confuse the palate enough that a cauliflower puree could seem like could pass off like a cheese sauce. And once I got that, I got some vegan cheese on top, and that was it. And if you look at the video, and I mean, it's really hard to tell, and I made like hardcore cheese lovers try it. I mean, my wife
Hmm.
loves cheese, and she tried it, and I mean, she said, "Okay, I would never really miss mac and cheese if I had this." So it
Right.
worked out really well.
Like I've been a meat eater
Mhm.
my whole life. Like honestly, even when I was a kid, I was like banging out chicken at dinner and lunch and all the meals. That's how I used to roll. But like more recently, I have a more fond for eating foods that actually are healthier and not just eat meat for the heck
Mhm.
of it. But there are still people, and a lot of people, who still are hardcore meat eaters. How does a person who is totally for vegan food, and how does a person who's totally for
Mhm.
meat eating, is like, how can they come to terms with each other?
So I'll tell you, had you met me a year and a half ago, and if you saw me talking to a vegetarian, you'd probably think that I was attacking him and I would stab that person. If anyone came to my restaurant and ordered a vegetarian dish, I'd consider them a second class citizen. And because my restaurant was essentially a meat driven restaurant, a meat and seafood driven restaurant, I would call
Right.
myself a meat peddler. And I mean, that meat was the primary source for all my income, and meat was, I mean, at the crux of my culinary expertise, and meat was in 99.99% of all my meals. And if anyone told me they're a vegan, or a vegetarian, I'd sit them down and really give them a serious lecture for an hour on
Yeah.
what they are missing out in life. But this perception, and now today I'm the exact opposite. And this perception came about with knowledge, with realization, with understanding on what implications it has, on what implications meat or plant animal based proteins or any animal based products have. And I think the more you get conscious about it, the more you read about it, the more you truly understand it, the more you really begin to realize, "Ki, do I really need it?" So
So
I mean,
then the
I'm
ideally
truly not the kind of
So
guy.
then, ideally, the best way to do this is to just spread awareness about how healthy vegan food is. And it's not, I feel it's not about converting totally into veganism. It's more about, you know, eating meat and poultry is fine. But if you have it in balanced proportions, right? I mean, it's never too bad to have like a
Abs-
vegan day a week, or maybe two or three of them, right?
Exactly. I think you couldn't have put it in any other better way. It's very well put. That I think being a crusader and being a hardcore guy who says, "Oh, I'm never going to touch animal-based proteins,"
Right.
and "Oh, you should do that too," I think is not the right approach for the world, and that's not the approach that's going to work in the long term. uh, Different things work for different people. Some people have stopped eating meat or have turned to veganism for animal welfare. For some people, it was environmental reasons. For some people, it was the effect of hormones and the antibiotics that was being fed to animals. For some people, it was personal health. So the more you understand how it affects you, I think the more conscious you get, and the more conscious you get about putting every bite in your mouth, or putting every bite at least even in the dustbin, the more we are moving towards a better, more sustainable world.
Right.
So all I think is, if you are aware, if you're conscious, and if you have that knowledge, and you're still taking a decision to eat meat or waste meat, or just unnecessarily eat meat even if you don't want to, then it's your call. It's up to you, man. Very good. But
Right.
had we done this in a balanced way since the beginning of time, we would not have reached a position where in all forms of pollution, the largest source is animal husbandry.
That's
So
true.
we would
That's
not.
true. Animal husbandry is like the largest source of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it's mostly methane, which is even worse than CO2.
It's essentially cow farts.
Yeah, that's that's actually really accurate if you think about it. And I think the biggest the biggest realization for me was when you actually compare the numbers. It's if you just remove animal husbandry from earth, let's say we all convert to vegetarian and vegan food, you can basically reduce the equivalent of equivalent carbon dioxide for 1 billion cars, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Because the whole
It's insane. Yeah.
transportation industry is like taking up 14%, it's responsible for 14% of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and animal
Mm-hmm.
husbandry is about 15 or 16%, if I'm not wrong. So
Right.
I mean, one way
It's
to tackle
actually
the global
around 17%. Yeah,
okay.
70 to 21. Yeah, it's in between that range. But yeah, I mean, yeah, the estimates vary for different studies.
So
Yeah.
let's go into the future, and let's say we're in 2050. What does food look like to you?
Okay. Very, very, very different. First of all, I think 30% of all our protein requirements on the planet will be fulfilled by insect protein.
Right.
Because right now that seems like the most promising kind, as icky as it may sound, and as difficult as it may be for most cultures. But a significant percentage of our protein requirements will be some form of insect protein, or if not insect, at least it's algae, or a phytoplankton, or now there is a new kind of protein which is called solenin, which is essentially just making protein out of thin air.
Okay.
So I think this is definitely the future. By 2050, these are the major sources of protein we'll be consuming. But food will look not as not food will not look the way it did, like we remember it or we saw it. It'll come in many different forms, and be very varied, and everything will not be what it seems. I'm sure in 2050, by 2050, eating real meat or real chicken will again move back to a time when eating chicken was a celebration in a family.
Correct.
You eat, or
Correct.
eating meat was a celebration. So we'll go back to the times when mainstream meat consumption will take a novelty status, and plant-based alternatives will become the obvious choice for multiple reasons, for price and for environment, and for regulations, and for whatever reasons. So
Right.
yeah, that's in a broader term, that's the future. But I also feel there will be an increased amount of focus on eating either healthier stuff, things that make you get you good immunity, on eating things that are more sustainable, and on eating things that come from around you. I mean, right now most of the vegetables in Europe are actually sent from northern Africa, where people don't really have the resources to eat those vegetables themselves. But 50% of these vegetables in Europe are actually thrown in the bin because they are rotting in the supermarket shelves and they don't really need that much. But
Right.
so this, I think this will change, and this would have to change, because if it doesn't, then we are going towards an impending doom.
Right. And when you talk about food sustainability, what exactly do you mean? Like, from what I gather, it's mostly about, like, in 2050, the anticipated population is going to be 9 billion people,
10,
which is
10
insane.
billion. Yeah.
10 billion. And to
Yeah.
sustain such a large population, how do we change our food ways? Like, how do we deal with food? How do we deal with production? How do we deal with the supply? And the demand for food is definitely going to increase. So how do we change other factors for that demand?
Uh, Two major things: one, control wastage, and two, optimize production. Right now, 73% of all agricultural land is used to grow feed for animals, the animals which we end up eating. Now,
Right.
if there were no animals to eat, or if we stopped eating these animals, 73% of this land, which is feeding all these animals, could be used to feed us. The current population of 6.5 billion is being fed on 23% of the agricultural land. So let's say we get the rest of the 73%. Don't worry about 10 billion. We can feed 20 billion people with our agricultural land.
Right.
Now, the other part of sustainability is that, moving to a natural system. I mean, compared to if we were to use pesticides or artificial fertilizers, we would not be able to produce that much food for a long time, because that is a shortcut. It's like a band-aid, but you need to rip that band-aid off. So it can work for a while very well, and it can give you good results. But when you rip that band-aid off, it's going to bleed like hell. So essentially, moving to a more, again, I mean, moving to an older system, moving to a more a better understanding, with equipped with the modern knowledge and tools, and then still going back to a natural way of doing things is going to be I mean, of prime importance. And you, me, and entrepreneurs and individual activists, if we talk about this, it's not going to bring that change about. We need our governments, our politicians, we need our policy makers to be aware, and to be educated enough to have this kind of knowledge absorption, and then think about it and put these policies in execution, so that we can bring about this change. So that's about farming. And the second most, like the most painful thing in the world is food wastage.
Right.
I think one of the core reasons why I left my job as a five-star hotel chef was because I felt I was part of a system that was so wasteful, just to please, or just so that some the privileged few don't have a little bit of displeasure.
Right.
So I mean, I'll give you a small example. I mean, I'm not gonna say much. And there was a big event at a five-star hotel where I was cooking. It was an event for about 1,000 people, and of course there were like 40 dishes on the menu, and
Just out of
and yeah,
curiosity,
and
which
at the
hotel
end,
was that?
it was the hotel I used to work at. It was ITC Grand Goa.
Okay.
So, and at the end of this event, I was in charge of closing up shop and then packing up everything and leaving. And this event for 1,000 people ended quite early. And when I checked the food that was remaining after this event, I realized that this was enough food to feed another 1,000 people.
Man,
And
that's
it just
insane.
baffled me, the kind of I mean, and the standard procedure for such a hotel function is you can't serve the stale food next day
True.
to another paying guest,
Right.
is to dump it out. You can't give it off to an NGO because the hotels don't want to be liable for any kind of litigation afterwards if someone gets poisoned with
Correct.
this food or anything. So the standard procedure is to dump it out, and dumping that food out, it just put so much pain in my heart. I just couldn't accept that I'm part of a system that is so flawed, and I just refused to go down that path. So this is just one very small example. I mean, the wastages happen from every little stage.
True.
I'll take an example for apples, or any kind of fruit that's grown. So once the fruit is grown and then they are sorted, in sorting procedure, at least 15% of all fruits and vegetables are discarded. Why? Because they don't look like a photographic vegetable. They
Correct.
either are
Correct.
skewed in some way, or and it's our fault that we don't
Right.
buy thinking, oh, this is a damaged or mutated vegetable. I'm not. This is not good enough for me.
Hmm.
So, and let's say if you see a bundle of spinach that looks absolutely beautiful, like you'd see in a book, and a bundle of spinach which has like a few insects on it, a few of the leaves are eaten, 99% of the people would go for the beautiful spinach. I would never buy that, because
Right.
if it's not good enough for the bloody insect, how the hell am I supposed to eat it? This is clearly the better one. That's why the insects are eating it. If you actually took every food, if we weighed the actual food wasted in the total food production in the world, you'd realize that 50% of all food produced is down the drain, is not consumed by human, or even by an animal. It's essentially just decomposed.
My God.
So, I mean, imagine the vast amount of water, land, energy that we are spending on manufacturing this food just so that supermarkets look beautiful and full, or just so that when a guest comes to your house, you can show how prosperous you are by, making extra of everything and then throwing it out the next day. I mean, who is this show off for? So I mean, this whole system just really hit me very badly, and I just wanted to get out of it. And so yeah, these are the things that we must be asking our restaurants: how much food are you wasting? We must be asking our vegetable vendors, where did you get this from? And we must be asking our farmers on, why are you throwing this away, or what do you do with this? And then we should again, as a consumer, be aware, or what can we do with this? I mean, there's a company that's taking all the waste produce and then converting them into a useful product. Like you could, let's say, you could take all those not so good apples and make a juice out of it, make a vinegar out of it.
Right.
I mean, the possibilities are endless. So that is when you not only reducing food but also making something productive. Not only reducing food wastage but also making something productive out of it. And there's so many avenues to make a business out of just food waste. It's unreal. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
that's what we
actually
really need to
something that
work
never
on.
hit me. Like if you think about it, making juice out of the sorted apples, I mean, that's actually a really interesting way to kind of have a win-win situation, right?
In fact, there is an entrepreneur in India who started this a while back. Unfortunately, she could not, position it in the right way, of whatsoever reason it stopped. And what their idea was to take all the overproduced, or not the fruits that have been thrown out, and take those and use it to make wine. And I think that's a brilliant idea.
Hmm. That's true.
But unfortunately, I think the execution was not done right, so it didn't really work out for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, the industry right now, it's very, like people are really starting to get into it, but it's tough to, spread awareness about these things at the moment. I mean, because from what I gather, as long as you can't see a physical issue with something, it's very tough for people to get their mind around improving the situation. Like with all the stuff that's going on with climate change, I mean, people know it's going to be bad, but still you waste electricity, you waste food, and you don't have the proper numbers in mind, or you don't have the proper numbers to see. Until then, people are just quite careless about things until they actually can see something really bad, something that's really bad happening out there. So I think that
Yeah.
realization is not there with the people, and that's why such companies who are actually making a constant effort of improving the food ways of a country, of the world, these companies aren't being aren't sustainable at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, if you just look at a few things that we have been fed as a species since we've been little, rich people eat meat. Meat is a thing for
Right.
celebration, and men eat meat, and it's a sign of prosperity, and it's a sign of how
It's a sign of
influential
power.
you are.
Yeah.
Exactly, and we've been taught all the wrong numbers, to be honest. We've been told switch off the light, don't put the tap on when you're shaving. That really wastes a lot of water. I'm sure no one ever taught us. I mean, at least no one ever taught me that a single chicken burger costs at least 20,000 liters in water by the time it reaches your mouth. And had I
But
known
how is
this, I
that?
would
Can
have
you
not
explain
thrown.
that a little bit? Because it's tough to get your
Absolutely,
head
it's
around, like 20,000 liters of water is going to be this much, and that one chicken
yeah.
patty is going to be this much. How does that take place?
Okay, so it's not just the chicken, but I'll start with the water. So
Okay.
when you eat a chicken burger, it goes back many, many steps. Uh, Step one being a seed, which is being watered all throughout its life cycle, so that it can become a plant and then give more seeds, which I then feed to the chicken, which is going to eat those seeds all throughout its life and consume more water throughout its life cycle, and then the chicken goes to a slaughterhouse where again it's processed, and then there I'm going to use a certain amount of water to process it, wash it, clean it, and then pack it, and then I'm going to put it on a truck which will use some petrol, which will be driven by a guy who's been drinking water, and then by the time it comes to a supermarket, and all the wastage that's happened to get that one perfect chicken burger to the market, I would have wasted, for 100 chicken burgers to the market, I would have wasted 10, right?
Right.
So keeping all of these water that I've put, in every stage, in the land, in the seed, in the chicken, in the in the whole system, in washing it, processing it, and making it a chicken burger, when you put all these together, it's a staggering number. It's astounding that we've never been told this, and everyone told me that if you save a mug of water, that's a lot, but no one told me that if you stop eating this burger, or if you don't throw this burger in the bin, and if you use it judiciously, then you'd be saving 20,000 liters of water. Just the whole animal husbandry system is, I think, the most inefficient systems in terms of scientific conversion of calories, from proteins to calories, in the world. So we've optimized chickens and fish and pig and cows to be at their best growth. We are giving them hormones, boosters, and antibiotics so that they can grow in the best possible way.
Right.
Yet even at its peak, most of these systems can only convert a calorie have a calorie conversion rate of 1 is to 9 or 1 is to 10. That means for every 1 calorie that I am getting, I need to put in 9 calories in a chicken system so that I get 1 calorie.
Correct.
So how that works is, again, I mean, there's a lot of energy that is being consumed by the chicken in its own life, using its own muscles and using it, doing its own daily things, and all of this calories that are lost in between could have been avoided if I had just taken the 9 calories and just directly taken a plant and eaten those 9 calories. It would have made much more sense. But what we do is we feed it to the chicken. We feed the chicken 9 calories, and we get 1 out of it, and then we eat it. So
Right.
it's one of the most inefficient systems in the world, and it's really strange how we've managed to make it such a mass industry, and how we have made sure that even such an inefficient system is feeding such a significant percentage of the population.
Right. I mean, it's mostly about, like, it's very tough to get your head around to not have meat anymore, right? But then how can so I'm assuming that in the next 20 years meat production is not going to be, like, I hope it's going to be lower than it is now. I mean, it's definitely getting lower than what it was 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But
No, actually, meat
is
production
that
has
not true?
quadrupled.
But like,
Not
if
at
you
all.
think about
Meat
it,
production.
the amount of consumption would have been, like, because the population is increasing, the consumption is more, but the percentage of consumption would be less because a lot of people are going
That's
towards
not
veganism.
That's not true at all. Vegans and people who are aware are such an insignificant percentage of the population. In reality, in the past 20 years, meat production and demand has quadrupled, and it's still growing at a very, very steady rate. And with all the pandemics and awareness with meat consumption, it's still, vegan and Beyond Meats and all of them have just made a speck in their, in their business. We're less than 2% of the whole meat industry in the world. So we're really nowhere close to stopping meat. And it's been largely because where do people eat meat the most? It's either the developing countries, where money has just started coming in, and slowly from a family that earned 500 rupees a month, you're going to a family that you're earning 500 rupees a week, and they don't mind spending 300 rupees on a chicken meal once a week. Come on, they're fine with that.
Yeah.
It's because of that, actually meat consumption and demand has increased. And it doesn't show any signs of slowing down, at least now. So I mean, I God knows what kind of massive pandemic it'll take for for them to realize the damage that they've been causing.
Hmm.
But yeah, we hope that people become more and more aware, and there's a wave after which most people realize that enough is enough. We won't do it anymore.
So what is going to be the biggest challenge for people to reduce the meat consumption? Like, which meat is going to be the absolute worst, like the meat that you just should stop eating right now? I mean, personally, to me, it's going to be bats with what is going on. But what's the most likely meat that you should stop eating at the moment?
To be honest, more than anything, I ask people to stop eating fish. We've overfished our oceans to such an extent. I mean, for sure, in the next 15 to 20 years, the oceans are going to reach a point where it'll be very, very hard for us to catch fish, and especially for people who depend on it for their livelihoods, it's becoming progressively hard. A place like Goa, I know for a fact, is known all over the world for its seafood, and every time you come here, you would see posters, oh, fresh crab, fresh lobsters, and
Yeah.
prawns, and all of that. You see that advertised in the shacks, and you see that everywhere. But in reality, Goa has no seafood. We have to get all our seafood in from Karnataka or Maharashtra.
Oh, I didn't know
It's
that.
horrid. It's tragic, yeah, and it's true because the fishermen. I mean, if you talk to the fishermen around here, they say that you can't get anything. Earlier, we could get fish right here in rivers. Then we needed to go a few kilometers out into the ocean, and now we need to go so deep into the ocean. We're out there for 6, 7 days, and yet we don't get anything.
That explains the prices of seafood in Goa then.
And Goa is relatively untouched. I mean, if you look at the number of tourists or anything, we're still quite small compared to some of the bigger places in the world,
Yeah.
and we have depleted ourselves. This is just one small ecosystem that we have destroyed completely, and there are millions of them around the world that are getting destroyed. And once we reach the point of no return, and the oceans begin to die, we are a dead species. I mean, there's no coming back from that.
Hmm.
We might have a revolution one day where we decide, okay, kal se we are banning everything as a country, or as a species, we are banning all chicken and all fish and all beef. So we might still be able to bounce back from the damage we've done with them. But if we destroy the ocean, yeah, we're done for. I mean, so we should really think about that.
Yeah, that's actually quite surprising because I didn't know that overfishing was, you know, quite a big thing at the moment. And like it's kind of
That's the
surprising
sad thing.
because like if you think about it, the carbon footprint or the amount of CO2 that it takes to produce like one patty of beef is much higher than that of a fish. But it's quite so I mean an obvious path to reducing the CO2 would be converting, like, stop eating beef and going towards chicken and fish, which are much more which are much lesser in the CO2 production. But that shouldn't be the case, as you said. Like, the amount of overfishing that we're doing is actually quite damaging to the environment.
Very, and that's the tragic thing, that we don't really talk about these things. And although some people might say that, okay, don't eat beef, it has a larger carbon footprint. Eat a healthier meat, eat a leaner meat, eat fish or eat chicken.
Right.
It's like saying choose the lesser evil. It doesn't make it any less evil. It's just that it's your perception of a lesser evil.
Yeah,
And
but I mean,
at the end of the
it's
day,
it's definitely like, I mean, it's not just about like having the lesser evil. It's more like, as of now, if I want to convert a meat eater into a vegetarian, I have to do it through a slow process, right? I mean, it's
Absolutely.
more like a first step towards veganism. If I can put it that way. It's
Right.
not about
Very
the
true.
lesser evil at the moment, I guess, for me at least.
Yeah.
So what exactly should we do? Like, is eating poultry better than seafood and beef? Is that it?
Not really. So what I'd suggest people to do, if they are trying to move to a better lifestyle and to move to a better eating system, first I tell them, make a list of vegetables that you've not had in the past month, and I'm sure there are quite a few. I
Right.
mean, I'm sure you can think of 5 right now that you haven't had in the past month. Just make sure that you have one of everything that you know of, every vegetable or every grain or everything that you know of. You have one of that once a month, and that's it. All you need to do, let's say you make a list of 10 lentils that is available in your vicinity and 10 vegetables that's available in your vicinity. There's 20 meals right there. Use each of them for one meal each. And that, and I'm saying, yeah, I agree. If you're eating meat 3 times a day, and you don't want to just switch it off completely, I get that. But I'm just saying, bring more variety into your diet, and make sure that you eat, like, let's say, even if you're eating chicken, eat it with a lentil, eat it with a vegetable that you haven't eaten in the past week or 2 weeks or month. And then once you, this additive, which is right now acting as a supplement to your chicken, becomes a common part of your diet. That's when you can start thinking about reducing the quantity of chicken in your diet and then replacing it with any other kind of plant-based additive. So it can't happen overnight. It was a big transition for me. I mean, I'm still a big foodie. I get weak in the knees if I see a wonderful shawarma. I mean, I just can't walk past. But I call myself, I'm not a vegan, to be honest. I'm vegan-ish.
Right.
I give myself a day off in the month, and I indulge myself. I'm okay to eat chicken momos and chicken shawarma. But the more I'm moving away from an animal-based diet, the more I feel myself I myself feel like not eating it. Now every time I eat chicken, I have this doubt in my mind: is it stale? Is it fresh? Am I eating it right? Is it from the right source? So that doubt is just been building up, and it's helping me. It's because I'm being more and more conscious about every meal, about everything, and that's what we need to do. And if you started just including a lot of variety in your diet, a lot of lentils, a lot of vegetables, and then only then can you start thinking about reducing the meat component in your diet. Now it's not a problem for Indians because we have a very carbohydrate based diet. In Europe or in the States, it's a largely protein based diet.
Right.
So that's the approach for them. For Indians, it's very relatively easy. We eat roti more than we eat the sabji.
True.
Right.
Very true.
So for us, it's an easier transition in daily lives. But this is the approach I
वो
would.
इंडियन मॉम्स का होता है ना यार, 2 रोटी तो खानी है.
That's true.
That's how it's been for me at home,
Yeah.
and I'm sure everyone
Yeah.
else
It,
as
it
well.
is like, yeah, it's compulsory to eat 2 rotis even if you're not hungry.
The difference of diet is what changes the approach towards going into veganism, right? Largely, that is what you're proposing.
Absolutely.
I feel the biggest challenge towards converting into veganism would be letting go of milk, because again, as Indian mothers like to say, वो एक glass दूध का रोज शाम को पीना है, and had it not been for Bonvita, I wouldn't have been drinking that milk.
That's milk is a big battle, and I still go around talking to chefs and telling people how bad it is. But I'll start off with a few basic arguments. Nature designed milk to be the primary source of sustenance for a tiny calf that was born at 15 kilos when it was born. Over the course of the next 6 months, this calf has to increase its weight 10 times. In the next 6 to 8 months, this calf is going to be 100 kilos or 150 kilos. And the only thing, the largest part of its diet is cow milk.
Right.
Now, we are not cows.
Correct.
How the hell are we drinking so much milk? I do understand it has been part of our part of our culture. It's a sacred animal, and doodh pina is considered healthy and all of that. I totally get it. That's because we've been misfed the information. Yes, cows have been an important part of the common Indian or common rural household, but at each cow did not have so much milk that every family had the luxury of having doodh, dahi, butter in the kind of quantities that we have right now.
True.
It is really difficult to replace milk because in India at least the mithais are made from milk, the ghee is made from milk, the butter is made from milk. Everything is made from milk, and milk is just considered holy and pious enough that it doesn't damage you, so
Yeah.
people don't even feel bad about drinking it. But the reality is 50% of all human beings are actually lactose intolerant. Our bodies are not designed to digest such large quantities of protein and lactose. And but how we never really recognize it, because number one, we've been conditioned to consuming such large amounts of lactose since we were kids. One. And number two, we always put off, let's say you have a cup of milk in the morning and you feel uneasy, you always put it off to acidity or kal kuch spicy
Right,
khaya
right.
hoga, or to some other nonsense. Now my sister, I'll tell you an example of my sister, and she used to really have issues with her stomach, and she loves Bonvita. She's a Bonvita baby just like you, and she can't start her mornings without having a glass of Bonvita. And every day after her Bonvita, before she went to work, she'd feel pukish. Most of the days she'd end up puking or just feeling uneasy for the rest of the day. She never really knew what it was. I did an experiment. I forced her to replace her milk with soy milk for a couple of days, and those days she was fine. And that's when she realized that, oh, maybe I'm not really very okay with milk. Maybe I'm slightly lactose intolerant. So that's the thing with most of us. We don't really know if it's really good for us or not. So how do you replace milk? Now, of course, there are a lot of options. There's soy milk, doesn't have a pleasant
There's
taste.
almond
There's
milk.
almond milk, very expensive.
Right.
There's rice milk. I mean, everything has a good and a bad part to it. Now,
Correct.
first of all, the whole idea that was sold to us with beverages like Bonvita and Horlicks was it's a energy drink, or it's a drink that gives you the micronutrients needed for kids. Now, is it necessary that we force these micronutrients down the kids' throat through a medium which is not good for them? So why not come up with beverages that are not milk based, still give you the micronutrients and are healthier and a better source of protein? Why not work towards them? Why not make them tasty for the kids?
Right.
So that's the approach we need to be thinking of. And in fact, at my company, we were really discussing this at length, and we really wanted to really tackle the chai problem. That if you want to turn vegan, you can't leave chai. In
Correct,
India, you've
correct.
got to have chai, and like in the States or in Europe, you've got to have coffee.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? So we've been working a lot, and we've come up with 4 plant-based alternatives that are ready to go, instant powders, which you essentially mix in hot water, and you get masala chai, you get filter coffee, you get hot chocolate, and you get haldi kesar doodh, that's saffron and turmeric milk. And this is it. What we really need, what do we really need out of this? First, it needs to be functional. It needs to give me the kind of energy and the kind of proteins and carbohydrates and micronutrients that I would expect from a milk. And it needs to be light on my stomach. And most importantly, it needs to be tasty and price effective, right?
Right.
So if we are able to achieve a dish or a recipe like that, let's say if I give you a hot chocolate every day that tasted delicious and is not very expensive, would it matter to you if it's made from a cow's milk or a donkey's milk, right?
Not
It
at all.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
So that's the approach we need to start taking on making taste, convenience, and price the king, rather than the source of the ingredient. So I think the more we move towards that, the better our adaptability towards leaving milk will get.
Yeah, I think milk is honestly the biggest rock in the way of veganism.
Mm-hmm.
I think let's talk a little bit more about bugs. As you said, when I asked you what's going to be the future food, you said it's mostly going to be bugs and algae, right? Like, what bugs are we talking about? Is it like beetles and locusts and other stuff, or it could
well,
be just about anything?
Well, there is a lot of research going on. There are bugs ranging from maggots to worms to larger insects to many different forms. These would not most definitely would not be accepted in the most significant part of the world. I mean, in largest part of the world, it won't be accepted as a primary source of protein. Because the moment you see it, or the moment you have that feel of it, you would not
Right.
eat it.
You're
It
disgusted
would
by
be
the
disguised.
yeah. You're disgusted by
Exactly.
the photos of the bugs and stuff.
Exactly, and most cultures are not used to eating bugs.
Yeah.
But it is okay in quite a few cultures. In some tribes in India, in Southeast Asia, the whole of China, I mean, they're okay with it. It's considered a delicacy. It's considered a snack.
Yeah,
it's
even
fine.
ants are
So these
considered a snack in a lot of tribes.
Absolutely. In India, there's a tribe that makes chutney out of ant, and it's a delicacy. If you go to
Yeah.
that tribe and have a meal, you got to have the ant
I think
chutney.
I watched that on one of Gordon Ramsay's India visits, if I'm
Yep.
not wrong.
Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely.
honestly, I'm a big
And
foodie like you as well.
I can
So
see.
I watched a lot of Gordon Ramsay, and I'm not too good at cooking, but I do my fair share of cooking at home, especially now when
Wow.
the pandemic is going on.
Absolutely. It's a life skill.
So the most I can do is probably cook a chicken schnitzel, which I learned from MasterChef Australia about 4 or 5 years ago. So that's
Right.
the best thing in my arsenal right now. But
I love that show. I love that show.
yeah, I watched about 8 seasons of that show, and then when I came here, I just ended up not watching it because I don't have a TV here right now, which is probably good for me considering I got to study a
Yeah.
lot. But yeah, so I kind of
Absolutely.
left that, but there's definitely this interest for food. But anyways, let's get back to the bug situation, which
Yeah.
could be considered a pun since we're both computer scientists.
Yeah. So yeah, like we were talking about bugs. So yeah, a lot of communities and societies will actually be okay if eating the bugs in their normal form or in their raw form or whatever form. But for the rest of the world, bugs would not come the way that we expect it to. They would come as additives in your burger. They would come as an additive in your flour. They would come as an additive, in some processed food. So that's the way, we and these would be actually advertised. Huh? I mean, they would be
Right.
at the front of the label saying reinforced proteins from insects or extra proteins from insects. But again, taste is going to be the king in this field. And until we realize how to make bugs tasty, and until we prove to the world that there is not enough protein to feed everyone, unless we start using bugs in a judicious manner, again without abusing them to a point of
Right.
destruction, until we reach that stage where there's still a long way to go before bugs become mainstream. But yeah, they are going to have to. There is no choice but for us to have make bugs play a major role in our food chain in the future. We have no choice.
I was watching Shark Tank a while back. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with the show or not.
Of
Those who
course
are
I
not,
am.
it's
Of
it's
course.
basically a show where small startups and companies, they look for investors, and the investors can choose to either put in money or just say that they're out of it and that they don't want to invest. So one of the people who showed up on the show, they had this bug based wheat flour that they were trying to promote. And the problem with them was that basically no one gave them money and no one gave them the funding that they needed. And the biggest
Yeah.
reason for that was that it's a put off when you actually see the packaging and there's a photo of a bug on the front of the packaging. So that mindset has to change, because I mean, it's better to have something than nothing. So if you think about in the future, if we're going to have no proteins available and bugs are going to be the only resource, then I think it's good to transition into that from today.
And see, I think bugs will start playing a role starting from places like Africa, India, Bangladesh, where there is a significant percentage of the population that's looking for a cheaper economic source of protein. And that's not going to happen right now, because even these places are not open to taking bugs or anything as a mainstream ingredient. But it's going to happen when the shortage starts, when protein deficiency becomes a cause of major public health care, becomes a major public health care issue, and the government makes it mandatory for poor countries to put bugs in their flour, or to put bugs in their salt, or to put bugs in their grains. Only then it's going to come into mainstream. With that's, as I said,
Correct.
until we reach the point of inflection where we are about to face extreme famine and poverty from lack of food, till that point bugs will not come into mainstream. But when that point is reached, at that point bugs will become mainstream.
Right. I mean, bugs are rich in low fat proteins, as you said. They're rich in fiber, and they're definitely more economical, and they don't need as much resources as a chicken patty or a beef patty or another meat. So I think they're definitely the way to go. It's just that we have to change our perception about them.
And I think we'd also have to convince PETA to not undertake bugs and insects in their wing, because
Correct, correct. I mean,
that would take us
honestly,
back to square one.
yeah, honestly, if you think about it, like if I say that that a protein bar is like non-veg, like it's made out of proteins from, let's say plants or whatever, and I create a protein bar, I don't, as a manufacturer, I don't really, there's not an obligation for me to say that where those proteins have come from, right? I mean, you're definitely going to have to
Mm-hmm.
write it in the back what the ingredients are, but you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
project it that it could have been made out of insects, right? I mean, if I'm a manufacturer
Absolutely.
and I'm creating,
You try
like,
to hide it.
I mean, if I could, why not? I mean, it's, if you think about
Absolutely.
it, the only thing that I have to say is, like, it's a non-veg product and it's made out of, like, you can definitely say in the ingredients
Protein.
that it's made, the
Yeah.
protein, it's coming from insects and stuff. I mean, it's
Oh, I mean, or
definitely a
you
way
could
to
give it a
go.
fancy name.
Yeah,
Or
we
you could just give it a fancy name. You could give it a chemical name and then put that there so everyone's confused.
right.
Not convinced,
Or
but
maybe just
confused.
give the scientific name for the species. We could do that as well.
I'll give you an example of a company that's very mainstream and that's doing that so well. Now, I'm to be honest, I'm not really 100% sure how they are doing it and what they're doing, but I'll tell you what my perspective on this is. So Just Eggs, and I'm sure you have access to a bottle. And
Hmm.
next time you buy a bottle of Just Eggs, I want you to read the ingredients. And in the list of ingredients, in the last there is a thing called. I mean, of course, there are a lot of things that most people won't understand. But in the last, there is this thing which when I read the label for the first time, it really struck me, and I was like, what? How the hell can they put transglutaminase? So transglutaminase is essentially what a molecular gastronomy chef or a food scientist would call a meat glue.
Hmm.
So meat glues have been in use for a long time in high-end restaurants and in fancy three Michelin star restaurants, where using transglutaminase you can make a spaghetti that's made purely out of shrimp, and using
Oh.
plant-based using meat glue you can take trimmings of a steak and then put them together and get beautiful marbling and make like a beautiful beef steak by just adding the trimmings and fat that have been left after a good steak.
Hmm.
So because meat glue just is essentially a glue for meat. Now, transglutaminase is essentially derived from the intestine of a pig.
Hmm.
Now, how is it that a derivative from the intestine of a pig is featuring on a product that says it's a 100% vegan egg alternative? So I mean, I really intend to push Just Eggs in a corner, or people who worked at Just Eggs in a corner one day, and try and understand why and where do you get this transglutaminase from.
In essence, we've basically solved the biggest problem in the bug industry, and we now know that not everything that's said to be vegan might actually be 100% vegan.
Absolutely, and might not necessarily be good for you.
Hmm.
Where having a Beyond Meat might not necessarily mean it's great for you, because it's at the end of the day it's still a highly processed food.
Right, right.
Yeah, it might be better slightly for than a beef burger, but it's not like the best thing that you could eat.
So let's get more into the research that you're doing. What is the biggest challenge that you have as a researcher as of today? What's the biggest problem that you're facing?
Well, I mean, there have been quite a few. In the past few months, it's just been getting things from point A to point B. Getting a courier, I think, has been the largest challenge in the past couple of months. But I think the biggest challenge in general for an entrepreneur who's thinking to work in this field or intends to start their own research and start working in this field is most definitely the lack of support and capital. Although there are quite a few incubators and quite a bit of money that is being pumped into the research and development of such things, it is still 1,000 times less than the research that is being pumped into alternative energy.
Hmm.
And if you come to look at it, this is an equally important field.
Right.
Then why are we getting 1,000 times lesser energy than a company developing a very good battery for a car? So why not give that much money in such a relevant world problem?
Correct.
So yeah, there is not enough infrastructure to support such research and development. There is not enough funding. There is not enough foresight in companies. Even like bigger companies, they do not have the vision that they need to be investing in this right now if they are to have a step ahead in the game later. So that is really lacking, and I mean. A lot of people are working in this to make sure that we're getting the infrastructure. GFI is doing some wonderful work in India. They've set up 2 research centers especially for plant-based alternatives. They're helping entrepreneurs like me and other entrepreneurs reach out to other people and in the world. And so yeah, they're doing a lot of work, but yeah, there's still a big gap. And then the last, last is also capital, which is again a part of infrastructure. So if you had capital, you would have infrastructure, and you'd be able to nurture such people. So yeah, capital would be at the base of all of this. What is lacking.
And I feel there aren't enough people getting into the industry as well. I mean, it's definitely something that people should be looking at, considering what the future is going to be like. So if there's a budding engineer somewhere who's watching my podcast for God knows what reason, I mean, one definite path to success could be getting into this industry and researching about food technology in general and how to sustain food.
Absolutely. There's a big need. If you ask any plant-based entrepreneur, they'll tell you that there is a big gap in the kind of expertise we need to set up our own manufacturing and do our own research for biochemical engineers, bioprocess engineers, general mechanical engineers, and so on, and food technologists and chefs, and all of us to sit together and whack our brains together to really solve the real world problems. But there are not so many people because they don't really see any prospect. I mean, hardly the two food technology institutions, premier institutions in our country right now, and they're doing some wonderful work, but that's not nearly enough. What we need a lot more. We need like one in every city, like the IITs. Before we can start to make significant development in this field.
Let me ask some questions that were prepared by the innovation food team that I'm partnering up with for this podcast. Is veganism a concept for the rich?
Well, such was the perception before, for multiple reasons. One, veganism came to mainstream because a lot of rich people started to advertise it and profess it and adopt it in their lifestyles. Lewis Hamilton, Bill Gates, Leonardo DiCaprio, and in India it's Akshay Kumar, Genelia D'Souza, I mean Virat Kohli. We could keep going. So it was started by them, and although that they weren't the first adopters, but it became a hipster trend, and because rich people were professing it, hence a lot of people started thinking that veganism is only for the rich, because also the new products in that were vegan especially, as soon as they come out, they were following the general product cycle. A general product cycle is like a pyramid, where the best product, where the newest stuff comes to the peak, comes to the top.
Right.
It comes to the big hotels, it comes to the fancy restaurants, and then from there slowly it starts to become mass produced. We start to bring the cost down, and it trickles down to the lower sections of the society. Right, that's how it functions.
That's what happened with the plant-based meats, right?
Exactly. So that was the initial approach to all vegan products, and hence people thought, oh, veganism is only for the rich, or only for people who have everything sorted in their life. But that's not really the case. Now we are seeing more and more vegan communities and groups are coming up that say, I'm going to be a vegan. I don't need money. I don't need to buy a expensive imported Belgian cheese. I'm going to learn how to make my own cheese. I'll make it at home. I don't need to go out and buy a Beyond Meat burger. I'm going to try and make my own soy burger at home and see how much good can I make it, because essentially I don't want that processed food at the end of the day.
Right.
So I mean, you'd see more and more vegans in everywhere. I interact with vegan communities, and they all tell me one thing: please don't make it too expensive, because we are vegans, but we're not rich. So the gone are the days when it was only for the rich. It's not. Companies like Good Dot and Good Milk are doing exceptional work. They have taken the bottoms up approach, where they have started to design their products around the lower sections of the society, keeping the prices competitive to their animal counterparts, just so that there is a larger section of the audience that has access to it because of its price. And that's also the approach that we are taking. We want to keep it as close to we want to do our egg as close to a real egg as possible.
Right.
And the day that we are able to manufacture an egg for 5 rupees for 50 grams, I think we would have won a battle.
How do you visualize the texture and flavor of a particular plant that's going to be used to create either a plant-based protein or meat, or cheese or something else, or as you said, the vegan egg? How do you know that when you have to make cheese, which plant to go and buy and create cheese out of it?
Number one, again, it's about confusing more than it's about convincing. So I believe anything can be made into anything if you do the right process to it. But again, we don't want to do a highly processed food. So then we start going backwards to see what what vegetable or what what plant-based ingredients actually mimics the animal-based counterpart in terms of scientific composition. For example, we decided to use the moong dal, and even just eggs decided to use the moong dal to create the egg alternative. Now, this wasn't a hit and trial. This wasn't a guess, or this did not come from experience. This just came from the fact that we analyzed the proteins, the amino acid profile for a moong dal, and then for an egg, and we realized in the plant world, this is the one that comes the closest. So it naturally made sense to start our research there and then build from it. So I mean,
Right.
to making a plant-based alternative, there are many layers to making it. So first, you need to get the visuals right. It needs to look like that. Then you need to get the smell right. Then you need to get the flavor right. Then you need to get the I mean, it's many layers of work. So it doesn't happen at once. You need to start from the base and start with texture and mouth feel at first, and then work towards flavor and juiciness and whatever. So texture and mouthfeel is as the basic starting point should be the case.
How big is the vegan market in India right now? Because 30% of India, if I'm not wrong, is consists of vegetarians. The remaining 70% is mostly non-vegetarians. But where's the vegan market?
Well, it's a I mean, I think this is a kind of statistics like this, that 30% is vegetarian or 40% is vegetarian, has been largely used in India. But what we don't realize is that most vegetarians say, yes, we're vegetarians because someone from their family is listening. But they will go outside and eat fried chicken as soon as they get the chance.
Correct. I know a
So,
lot of my friends who do that.
and similarly, most people who actually say that they're non-vegetarians or hardcore non-vegetarians are, in terms of average annual consumption, they're not even eating an iota of the meat that their American or European counterpart is eating. So it's not a very precise way to identify the market. But if you look at any kind of market research in the plant-based alternative plant-based segment in the past 2-3 years, the largest percentage of the population, that is between aged 18 and 35 in India and China, they are open to trying plant-based alternatives, provided, again, three major factors: taste, convenience, and price. So if we are able to tackle these three things, if we are able to give these three things at a value that is better than chicken, then a lot of people are going to try it. And now I'll just give you an example. Although most people might not know there is a big market, but this market is going to create itself the moment we capture these three things. Good Dot is the perfect example. They started so small, and now there are so many people that have tried Good Dot meat, and I'm sure that once, even if you're a regular meat eater, and you eat this once, you'd realize that it's not so bad. I mean, I wouldn't mind replacing it once or maybe twice or even thrice in my weekly diet. So the moment you get that open door,
Right.
that's enough. That's a market right there, and it'll only continue to grow. If someone says, okay, I'll eat it once a week, I'm happy. I don't tell everyone, oh, don't ever eat eggs. Eat only my plant-based eggs. I tell everyone, eat egg seven. You eat egg 7 days a week. You just replace one of those days with my plant-based egg. That's all I want,
Right.
because I know that's all we need. Then it'll happen automatically.
I think the pandemic that's going on, and since we're all at home, it's the best time to, you know, have fun with food and try out new diets and new cuisines, and definitely get into veganism if you want to. You can definitely try
Yeah.
doing a vegan day. That's what I'm going to do right after this podcast, I guess. But or so I hope
Wonderful.
to do. But um yeah, so I think it's a great time for for people who want to experiment with their diet and want to give veganism a try.
The key is to ease yourself into it and not to choke yourself into it.
Right. I think the other thing is, like, there's a lot of people who are now posting their own recipes and stuff on social media. One of my cousins, he's created this page along with his wife, and both of them, they just put up basic simple recipes. That's the concept behind their page. It's like simple recipes that's easy to do at home, that you can do during the quarantine. So that's what their concept is. I'll link their page below as well. It's called simplefood.in, and
Oh wow.
I think it's like their concept is really interesting because literally the stuff that I see I can create on my own, even though I'm like, as of now I'm living the typical NRI dream of having ready-made parathas from Haldiram that are frozen. That's literally what I'm living off
Right.
these days. It's good that a lot of people are coming up and putting up their own recipes, their own twist on traditional recipes and traditional dishes on social media.
I mean, that's very, very true. I mean, if you look at the largest trends that people are searching on these days, if you look at Google trends, and if you try to understand what people are doing, you'd see that there is an explosion in terms of people who are putting recipes that say, "Acha, no sugar, no egg, no oven, no this, no that, no
Hmm.
yeast recipes." Working with minimal ingredients or working with limited resources and making everything simple and making your cooking time and all of that simple is the new cool thing to do.
Correct.
So even I focus all my recipes and I structure them in a way that you could train a retarded monkey to cook those dishes,
Hmm.
because we don't want, essentially, I mean, as free as we might be at our homes, we don't really want to spend strenuous hours standing in the heat of the kitchen focusing on cutting an onion. Absolutely right.
Right.
We really, I mean, want to make it a quick, easy, tasty, healthy, and not too many ingredients, not too many fancy ingredients, and we want to keep it like that. And the world is moving towards that direction because we don't really have time. I mean, look, I mean, you have studies to do, you have 10,000 different your interests to take care of, your hobbies to nurture, so you really can't spend a significant amount of energy on your food. I mean, and gone are the days when mums would be standing in the kitchens all day and just withering away their lives cooking for their families.
Hmm.
Even mums today want to get out of the kitchen, cook quick, and go about business and nurture their own dreams and careers.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is going to be the future, and I think it's great that they are doing it, and we must all embrace it, and we must all just accept it as a part of our lives and say, ki, I'm going to learn this simple and quick, and I'm going to make it even better.
Well, we're coming close to the end of the podcast. I just have a few more general questions for you. One of them would be, what do you think is the most overrated dish in India right now?
Well, I think biryani is the most overrated dish in India. The last year, Swiggy and Zomato.
Is it really? I mean,
I'll I'll tell you why. Okay, so last year, Swiggy and Zomato and all reported selling 70 biryanis per minute throughout the year. I mean, even when you were sleeping.
holy
So
shit.
that's more than one biryani a second that the country was consuming. And more often than not, it's not made in a way that biryani is supposed to be made. It's made like a pulao. And
Correct.
biryani is a whole sacred institution that you learn as a chef when you're learning from Lucknowi ustads. And I feel it's overrated because for multiple reasons. It's largely carbohydrate. I feel it's okay as a one pot wonder and a quick meal. Uh, yeah, but I think it's I mean, a good biryani takes a lot of thought and a lot of conviction, which is lacking in most biryanis that's been eaten in the country. Hence it is the most overrated dish. I mean, and a good biryani done right is, it can be like exceptional, can be god mode, but that's not
Right.
the real case with the biryanis eaten in India. So yeah.
Well, I definitely have to meet you when I'm in Goa anytime soon.
Absolutely, I would
And
love
it's
that.
it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure's all been mine. I've had such a pleasant conversation, and I feel humbled that you took the time out to reach out to me and then take listen to my story, and you were so patient and so understanding. And I just feel like I've made a wonderful friend just in this 1 hour that we've been talking. So thank you for that.
The practicality that you bring to veganism is something that not a lot of vegan experts or enthusiasts actually talk about. Like the stuff that we've discussed in the podcast today, it's ideas that are being supported by numbers and logic. Honestly, this is one of the best podcasts that I've had till date because of because of your expertise in the topics that we discussed today. So thank you so much.
I've had so much fun in this conversation, and I would love to do this again sometime. And I wish you all the best with this podcast, and I wish that it reaches 1 million subscribers within this year.
I hope so.
It will.
Well,
It will.
thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.